Greetings and welcome to another Warhammer 40,000 video where I'm going to go over my Warhammer Fest and Warhammer World tournaments. But before we get into things, please remember to like and subscribe as well as comment. Let me know what you thought of these videos. Well, this video. Did you like it? What do you think of my tournament reports? And remember, I've got a Discord you can check out in the episode description below for free, as well as a Patreon if you want to give me some more support, and an affiliate link at Element Games. But yeah, I'm going to go over two tournaments because once again, recorded a tournament, went to Warhammer Fest, meant to do an immediate Warhammer Fest recap, and then a bunch of Warhammer Kill Team releases came out. And then I just recently played out Warhammer World as well, so I thought I might as well combine them. So first I'm going to go over Warhammer World, and then I'll do... No, so first I'm going to do Warhammer Fest, and then I'll do Warhammer World. So hopefully it's not going to be too long. I thought about doing that as two separate videos, but then I was like, I have so many videos I'm behind on, I just have to get them all out of the way. And I haven't done a tournament report in a while. So I'll go over Warhammer Fest first. So for Warhammer Fest, if you weren't aware, it was in Manchester and it was an interesting event. For Kill Team selection, I was using Hand of the Archon, and I've been playing Hand of the Archon for a long time now. And I really like them. They're my favorite kill team in the game at the moment, and they're just really fun. So I like them, and I was planning to play them. Because of that, and I knew Warhammer Fest was going to be a mixed tournament, a 6-round, 2-day mixed tournament. I was like, okay, I need to learn Into the Dark. So I've been probably learning Into the Dark because it's actually been one of my weak points in the game. And instead of just like deciding to ignore it, I was like, no, I need to actually practice. So I've been playing lots of Into the Dark. I've taken them to an Into the Dark tournament where I think I came 8th or something, but I was the best Hand of the Archon player. And I've just been doing lots of Into the Dark prep with Hand of the Archon, especially as they're one of the hardest kill teams to play on Into the Dark. But as the trend was with Warhammer Fest, things changed. So I think about a month before, we were emailed that there was going to be no Into the Dark and it was all open. Okay, that's fine. Then I was a bit more relaxed because I was like, well, I'm definitely happy I'm decided to stick with Hand of the Archon. So I'll quickly go over my games now. So for round 1, I was against Intercession because I think half the field was Marines. Oddly, it turned out I was the only Hand of the Archon player out of like 118 players. So that was surprising. But as you can see, we were playing Secure. So the one you don't need to spend an action point. So I went with my standard anti-intercession loadout. So I went with leader with power weapon, dark lance and blaster, and then everyone else. And it was an interesting game. I think because I was able to get some canny shots, I definitely killed one Marine, turning point 1 with my blaster because I omened it. And effectively, I think by turning point 3, I had killed him and gone with Seek and Destroy, and effectively maxed it because I got Pay the Soul Debt. I wiped him out. My blaster was like MVP. It just rolled 3 hits and a crit every shooting attack. So I went pop up, shoot, dash back down after killing. Crazy, so much that even my Dark Lance got a kill. It was so powerful. And unfortunately, that guy, even though he's good, he wasn't prepared for Hand of the Archon, which would be a running trend. So I maxed that game. And as you can see, we were playing Octerus, and we were told about a week or two before by an employee, kind of, that our doors and hatches were open. So like I could run through and it was quite easy just to move up safely. I picked Defender, I believe, and I just went with the side I was on. And obviously, even though I had a barricade down in the bottom, I used Dens into the Dark, Dens into the Night, so I had Super Conceal, and that just allowed me to win that game. So that was round 1. Now we come to round 2, and I like to call this as where the second change happened to Warhammer Fest, but technically the first change for this tournament, for this weekend. So as you can see, we're all playing diagonal still. It's actually the same board. So everyone on day 1 was playing the same board, the same layout, although the layout wasn't exact. So because there was no reference image, all the boards were roughly the same, but it was all quesadilla deployment, so diagonal deployment. So I was against Bart, who is a friend and local London player, Harlequins. We actually played last week and a while back as well. So this was a really interesting match. So the only thing that I'd like to point out is that after we'd finished deployment and like, I think we were just about to do scouting, one of the one of the judges, the TOs, came around and told everyone that doors and hatches were off because that was somehow miscommunication, even though that wasn't in the pack, but doors and hatches were off. So it was kind of like we'd heard rumors, but we were unsure. And then we just found out that all doors and hatches were off, which was kind of problematic because I had based my entire game plan around moving through doors. And I was like, okay, that changes things heavily. But it was a really close game, super fun. I ended up losing by 1 point because basically I took recover item, surge forwards, and something else. But basically, instead of surge forwards, I should have taken courier because my plan was to surge forward through the doors. But if I'd taken courier, it would have actually been a tie. But then the issue is, with doors on, it would have been a very different game. But either way, it was a tight loss to Harlequins. And I think it was a very interesting and tough game. And even though I lost, I was really happy because it was a really fun game. I enjoy games more in Kill Team where they're really tight and it's back and forth, because like one of my highlights was my Disciple of Yelindra poisoning 2 Harlequins, then turning point 2, moving and dashing up, hitting the Death Jester and rolling 1-1, 3-5-4 and doing exactly 9 mortal wounds to kill him, and then being charged by an injured Harlequin because of my Torment Grenade and killing them as well. So Bart had to quickly swing around and kill my Disciple of Yelindra before she just murdered his entire team. But it was really cool back and forth and super fun. It was just frustrating. We were told that rules change, not at the start of round 2, but during it. And this is where we also found out they were pairing 1st v 2nd, 3rd v 4th, 5th v 6th, which we all hated. Because it turned out me and Bart were the only 2 people to max. Like, we both got 24 points in round 1. So we played each other, and effectively we knew going into that game whoever won would knock each other out of the tournament, which sucked. And the best way to do tournaments, in my opinion, and a lot of other players agreed, was random Swiss. So you still play people in your winners bracket or whatever you did, but it'll be randomized because it makes submarining really hard. Everyone complained, but it was ignored. And we were like, okay, whatever, it's too late. But that was the downsides of game 2, not the game itself, factors around it. Then in round 3, I was against Legionary, which is my 2nd Marine team over the weekend. So once again, really nice guy. I think we're playing loot, and the only issue is, I think once again, turning point 1, I managed to use my blaster to just kill another guy. Because I was thinking he was going to take Nurgle, I took my Agonizer leader, but he took Slanesh mostly, Khorne mostly instead, which was a threat until my blaster literally kept killing everyone. He was going to swing his leader around the top left flank, but he knew if he charged my guy on the point, my Dark Lance, who was just sitting there, would just kill him. And because of the threat of my Dark Lance, he just entirely backed away, because that was the plan. I was like, cool, you can charge over, kill my normal warrior on the point, and then you'll just be Dark Lanced in the face. And my Dark Lance didn't fire a single shot that game, but he did what the Dark Lance does best, and just his area control. But still really close and fun game, and his Legionary are painted amazingly, each one a different unique mark. But I think that one, I didn't max, but it was like, I think I maxed my TAC Ops, but it was like 15 something. It was close on loot, but I managed to max all my TAC Ops. But that was the end of day 1. So because of day 2, because of pairings for day 2, I kind of knew what I was going into, where I was like, okay, so now I'm going to face, I think, Phobos next, because I'm still where the pairings are. That's where I should play. And then at the start of day 2, round 4, we started hearing rumors, because technically me and a lot of other players pointed out to the staff that there's going to be like 2 undefeated players. And we're like, you know what? It would make a lot of sense to do a 4th round on the Saturday, because, you know, everyone's staying over, and that would be fine, and you would ensure Swiss, like an undefeated winner. And we're like, no, that's fine. And we're like, okay. And then before the start of round 4 on the Sunday morning, we were suddenly told there's going to be a 7th round enforced. And the only issue is, me and lots of other players were already planning to leave at 6 because the tournament's supposed to finish at like 5:30. We were like, well, that's ridiculous. We literally can't do that. And then that fed back, and then through Chinese whispers, we heard there might be a 7th round. So then at the start of round 4, they started asking all the players in the top 16 who would want to actually do a 7th round. And then that was mixed as well. So I played my 4th round, and then we found out at the 4th round they'd reset pairings. So now instead of doing their Swiss of 1st v 2nd, 3rd v 4th, it was now random Swiss. So now I was playing someone I didn't know, but randomized, who was also on 2 wins and a loss. And I was just confused because I was like, I was supposed to play Phobos, and now I'm playing Kroot. So I was playing Mikkel, one of our London players, and we were playing Loot against Kroot. So the board, once again, now it's still Octarius, but now we're playing Hamburger Deployment. And I must say, the layout on day 1 was okay. For 1 round, it was fine. Yeah, but for 3 rounds, it wasn't. This board is not good at all for 1 round, let alone 3. Because as you can see, if you can forward deploy, those vantage points in the middle are supposed to shut down the entire field. Because in the pack, there was only supposed to be 3 functioning vantage points, 2 of the buildings and the oil tower, but they turned them all on for this tournament. So I was like, okay. But anyway, so what happened? Mikkel got some nice loots, and then I noticed his bowman, his tri-blast was on engage, and I had my shredder. So what he did, he used his birdman to give his stalker +1 APL, and then moved his birdman away. And then his commsman away, and then I decided to go like, he looks like he's more than white away from that building, but I don't think he actually is. So I pre-measured it, and he was actually just over he was 1.5 inches away from the building. So he had an engage order, but he wasn't obscured. So I was like, I measured it in front of him, was like, okay, I'm going to activate my shredder. My shredder climbs up to the vantage point, and he moves around 3 inches and shoots. So I hit the tri-blast. I rolled crit, hit, killed the tri-blast, blasted into his bowman, knocked the bowman down to 2 wounds, then also hit his tracker, who would give him his stalker, who'd give him +1 APL, and killed him, and then dashed back behind the building. And effectively, that kind of won me the game there, because I immediately stopped all his punishment, and he lost his ability to actually get objective 6, the one in his drop zone. So after that, a few back and forth. What he did really well when he knew he was losing, because I was playing, I maxed Robber and Ransack and paid the soul debt, but he just refused to give me Eliminate Guard. So he just ran off all the points. So this was the only game I didn't max TAC Ops, but it was basically kind of swung from getting that point. So still a fun game, but it was just, you kind of hate when those opportunities come up when you get turning point 1 activation, 2 or whatever blasts, because this is why I'm not a fan of unsafe drop zones, which this board is heavily unsafe, and I was only able to make it safe because most games I was popping Dens into the night, so it was like he was just screwed. There was nothing really you could do apart from just deploy unsafely. But that was my round 4. Then round 5, I was against Legionary. So this was a mix of Nurgle and Korn and Zeech. So I went with my standard loadout, power weapon leader for elites, and then blaster and dark lance. And once again, because I could make my drop zone safe, my opponent didn't realize I had that ploy. So then when I did it, I was just like, cool, that's fine. And then once again, turning point 1, I had this, because he went first, he moved his butcher up, and I had the choice to either shoot his Shrive Talon or shoot his leader. And I was like, you know what? I can take his leader on that left flank. It's more important for me to kill his Shrive Talon because the Shrive Talon has the -1 attack. Once again, ran up, roll, hit 1 and a crit, rerolled the 1 into a hit, instantly killed the Shrive Talon, dash back down. Turning point 2, did the same to the butcher. And then the leader did swing around, but by that time I was just ignoring him because there was not much for him to do. and eventually got dogpiled by Drukari anyway. And I think end of turning point 4, I'd killed him. Like, the last thing he had was a sorcerer, and then I just charged my leader into a sorcerer, killed him with 2 crits. But we were playing capture, so an action point to capture the objective. And yeah, I managed just to wipe out my 3rd elite player of the day, of the weekend. But it was really fun. I told him we probably should have just gone all Tzeentch instead of mostly Khorne. No, it was Khorne Nurgle. Sorry, Khorne Nurgle. And I was actually saying, you may want to go Tzeentch, but it depends how common AP weapons get. But it was still a good game. It was like, he was just, once again, screwed because of the boards, because he could either just deploy everyone behind that central building or like spread out threats so he can actually move up. So it was just rough, which is why I don't like these board layouts. I forgot to mention at the end of round 5. So at the start of round 5, the tournament changed again. So we were now switched into a top 8 cut. And me and some of the other players were really annoyed because we'd either lost, or like me and a lot of players were on 1 loss. And we were going like, we know we can't win, but we'd like to play for 2nd or 3rd. And now you force this top 8 cut. It just messes up because now we're like, the best we can get is 9th. So what's the point of playing? Like, it's not even worth playing it for points. We're just kind of doing nothing. So we complained. And then at the end of round 5, me and the people who complained, like to the judges, were told, oh, don't worry. After the top 8 cut, once they've got their 2 undefeated players, those 2 undefeated players will play in a final. And then for points purposes, the pairing system will be broken, undone, and then it'll be based on who has the most points. And then we were like, how can you do that? BCP doesn't allow that. And so, we've got the BCP guys, so we can do whatever we want. And we was like, oh, okay. But I think that was the 5th or 6th time the tournament had changed at that point. We had honestly lost track, and it was just a complete mess. Like, at this point, we were just utterly confused at what was going on with the tournament. And to add to the confusion, round 6, final round, I was playing against Charles. Funny note, Charles ended day 1 as first, right? And he actually only lost round 4, just. The one time we had to meet each other this year had to be Warhammer Fest. So the odd thing is, Charles has played into my Hand of the Archon a lot. Well, twice. But he completely forgot I had Dens of the Dark. So he set up his sniper spotter on the top left flank and just completely forgot I could do that. But the interesting thing happened where he got one of he got a normal guy with a crack onto the point and blew up my Disciple of Yelindra. So then, but he already had a melter gun on the point. So I was like, okay, this is just who has most APL. So I switched my Crimson Duelist from concealed to engaged, charged his Grenadier on the point, killed him, dashed behind the heavy cover, and chose the melter gun not to control that point. And then he ended up being unable to kill my Crimson Duelist. So not only did I control that objective, because he couldn't control it, and then I managed to get ahead because of that. And then it was basically me taking slow trades. To show how hard it was for me to get a shot, my Shredder didn't get a shot until I think like turning point 4, because there was no safe shot for me. And I had to cautiously move up and just turn the middle into a scrum. Because the other issue, Charles couldn't move up because then he'd get shredded. So it was just really back and forth. But I managed to edge it out and also max points here. But it was just a real tough slog. Charles is really good, so that was hard. At the end of Warhammer Fest, on the first day, it was a mess, right? So we didn't know who the final placings were. We just knew who came first, second, and third. So Bart came third, and then one of the Spanish guys and one of the London players played off, and we all just went home. I know some people stayed. After they, I think it was the Monday or Tuesday, they properly updated the Warhammer Fest scores. So then it was revealed. First place was Dan with breaches. Second place was a Spanish guy with commandos. Third was Bart with Harlequins, and then 4th was me with Hand of the Archon, and then 5th was Carlos, and the rest of the top 8 is here. Interestingly, we had 4 breaches in the top 10 and 3 in the top 8, but once again, I was the highest Hand of the Archon player, technically by being the only Hand of the Archon player, which was still bizarre to me, Because what people were telling me, they're like, oh, they're basically too hard to play. They're like a win more team, so they're not reliable. And I was like, okay. But that was really cool. I was really happy I came 4th out of 118. That was great. Like, especially even after going out early, and despite what happened in that tournament, it was really fun. Would I go back to Warhammer Fest? Maybe definitely if it's run by the Warhammer World team, because it wasn't run by the Warhammer World team. I had fun, but it was in despite of the tournament. Like, one of my main highlights was actually I got nominated for Best Painted, which I've been trying to do for over a decade at GW events, and finally I've gotten nominated for Best Painted. So that was great. That was actually one of my favorite bits. But that tournament was a mess. Like, I've never been to a tournament where the rules have changed 5 times, technically 6 times, if you count us being told doors were working, not in the pack. Like, if they had stated everything they planned to do at the start, it would have been fine. Like, it's just such a confusing thing. I don't understand how they were surprised they sold 118 tickets and then didn't realize they would need a 7th round to have an undefeated player. And also, why not do 4 rounds on the Saturday? Because Warhammer Fest on the Saturday ended like 9 p.m. You could have done 4 rounds on the Saturday, 3 rounds on the Sunday. There was plenty time for that. But my main gripe is, if everything's in the pack, I don't mind. Like, if you tell me a tournament has a top 8 cut, that's fine, because then I can play it differently. If you tell me how pairings are done, that's fine, because then I can play it into the pack. Changing it every round almost was so confusing and such a mess. Like, I still enjoyed the tournament, but I feel like if you're listening to this, you think I'm lying, because it sounds like a mess. There was basically only one judge, who was just Elliot, the lead game designer for Kill Team, and he did a great job because he was managing 118 players effectively by himself. Like, one big gripe for me was timing, as in they were super relaxed with round times. We had 2 hours per round, which is fine. I don't mind that. What I did have issue is there was no round time calls. There was no round time pairings. That wasn't even a thing. We had rounds going way into lunch. Like, some games went 45 minutes into lunch, which was just crazy. Some people got 2 hours and 45 minutes to play a game. But then on the flip side, we were told, oh, if you're in the hall at lunch and it's 1 o'clock, half an hour before the game starts, you can just start playing. So we were like, well, I guess we should start playing. I mean, it technically gives us half an hour more time. But the people who had gone out into Manchester to get food and stuff were outside of the venue. It's just ridiculous. Like, that's how lax they were with enforcing time. And I understand you don't want to pressure people for time, but especially when you've got a golden ticket on the line, it's just bizarre. And I don't understand. It's just weird. So I don't know if I would recommend Warhammer Fest next year. It depends heavily a lot on where the venue is, especially as I don't like the venue. Like, Manchester was not great, but also there were no water stations. Sorry, there was one water station hidden somewhere near one of the exits. So, you know, it was basically £3 for a bottle of water, unless you had the foresight to, you know, you assume a big venue like that would have water fountains, but it didn't. But despite all the mess, like really all the mess, the staff were great and the players were great. It was a really fun time, really cool experience. I love the Spanish players. You know, Juan Reis never forgets his roots. But no, it was lovely seeing everyone. It's really good. I met so many nice people, such camaraderie, and just had a really good time despite what happened at the event. So my takeaways were got best painted nomination, which was great. Finished 4th overall, best hand of the Archon player, only hand of the Archon player, and just had a good time. Met a lot of people, saw a lot of cool stuff. That was fun. Now we'll go to Warhammer World. Oh, a lot happened since then. That was, as the time of recording, a week ago. This was the Into the Dark weekday Warhammer Fest, Warhammer World tournament. So Warhammer World has started doing weekday tournaments. Basically, it's to appeal to people who can't regularly get off weekends. So I'm a shift worker. So actually, it's easier for me to get a day off in the week than it is a weekend. So I love these. I was actually going to go to the first one, which was an open board event, but I was unable due to train strikes. So it's just unfeasible. So this was going to be all into the dark. That the tickets went up in January with the pack. So the pack, because no one knew what was happening with Crit Ops, it's the old maps, right? And then a week before, we got told that we were going to use Crit Ops, and it kind of implied we were using the new missions. It's fine. As for kill team selection, I decided to go with Felgor Ravagers. Now, I know people may go like, John, you made this big rant. How dare you? You're such a hypocrite. And you know what? You know, if you want to think I'm a hypocrite, that's fine. It wasn't playing it to go like, oh, I want to play the new hotness. It was actually just to prove a point, because what frustrated me, but understandably so, was when I said Felgor Ravagers are just a busted kill team. A lot of people said no. Specifically, a lot of people said they needed to see them in action, needed to see actual data, even though a lot of those people have said stuff like stats don't matter, we don't need the stats, just found it funny they wanted the stats on the Felgor. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'll just take them. It's going to be into the dark, either old missions or new, but I painted them on the Saturday and finished them on the Sunday. Well, so I started painting them on the Saturday before the event, so when they dropped, and then I finished them the Tuesday night before the event. But it was, the reason I took them was to show how dumb they are on Into the Dark, like how dumb they are in general. Because this kill team, I've only played about 1 game with them and 3 games against them. Because we actually did like one battle report where we tried Votan versus Beastman on Into the Dark, and that wasn't even worth showing. That was so bad. That's why I went with open instead. Yeah, so I was like, it was mainly just theory crafting. So on the Monday and Tuesday while I was at work, just started studying the warband more and going like, okay, this is what I'll just do. I'll just abuse Frenzy by just living and blocking off points. So that's why I took them. And I'll cover it more in the outro, like in the summary. But it's not because I enjoyed playing them. Like, there's a lot of kill teams I've played that I didn't enjoy. Like, I played them to prove a point, like Pathfinders, Harlequins, Breachers, and even Hunterclade. The only kill teams I actually really enjoyed playing are Hand of the Archon, Commandos to an extent, they were fun, and Tyranids. Like, I love playing Gene Stealers at the start. But anyway, let's get into this tournament. So at the start of round 1, me and my opponent, so there was 18 people, me and my opponent accidentally realized we were assuming it was Crit Ops when it actually wasn't. It was just, it was the old missions but with the new Crit Ops. So when I spoke to the events team, they said because of like their policies and stuff, they had locked into the missions, but they were allowed to change the TAC Ops because actually there's been a lot of re-releases of Crit Ops going through. And even if you were turned up at Warhammer World, there were actually several packs of Crit Ops you could buy. Like, several players actually bought it on the day, which was really cool. So I was playing against Vet Guard on mission 1.1. So as you can see, it's basically secure. So you need to control the objectives, and whoever controls the most wins. You get 1 point for each objective, and there's 3 objectives, and there's 3 ways to move. So what I did, obviously I took the same 10 Felgors every time, but what I did was I recon dashed up my Gorehorn, the guy who fights twice, and I was against Vet Guard, and then you see I put the Psyker and the Bionic Arm in the bottom, and then all the other 7 Beastmen I just dashed up in the strategy phase, and effectively I sent 3 Beastmen up to objective 1, 2 down to 3, and then I swarmed the middle. He almost demo mined my my Beastman, but I managed to get a lucky Pox bomb off, which made him -1 APL, so he lost his +1 APL. But the real thing came in turning point 2. So one of the tech I realized with Beastman is just Guard is a problem. Guard isn't much of a problem though when you use your gong to get a 3+ invuln and then charge into someone, because that's exactly what I did. His medic was on -1 APL and his leader just moved up to objective 2. So I was controlling objective 2, and then what I did is I banged my gong, charged into his leader and his medic, and effectively he then was like, screw it, I need to blow up those guys to clear up points so my team can move through after enough activations. So he tried to, he planted the demo mine next to his medic and his leader and blew us all up. Medic died. Leader lived on like 5 wounds because of a rosary. And then me, he got 3 hits. I saved 2 because, no, he got 4 hits, sorry. I saved 2 because I had a 3-up invuln. And then I rerolled the CP and I saved a 3rd hit. So everyone was wounded apart from my gong. And then I just kept abusing Frenzy. So the toughest part about this game was actually I went Seek and Destroy. And I didn't have anyone he was actually running onto the points to. But then he ran his Bruiser onto Objective 1. So then Turning Point, he'd run him end of Turning Point 2. So Turning Point 2, I kept him alive on 1 wound. Turning Point 3, revealed Rub and Ran's, eliminate guards, killed him. And then he sent his Confidant over. And then I charged, hit him down to 1 wound, parried out, and then killed him Turning Point 4. So I managed to max my attack ops and win as much as you can score on this game mode. Because like literally what I did, the MVP of the match was my mace guy running in with a frag grenade, hitting 5 guardsmen and killing 3 of them. And I was just abusing Frenzy. So he was eventually cutting down Beastmen, but I was body blocking. So I was activating, running, and he was like killing them. And then they were just sitting there. And even though he was trying to shoot them first, the issue is he didn't expect me to just charge and pass. So I was just charging and passing to block block their points to move up and onto the objectives, and I just won. But it was actually quite close because they were going to do tac ops first, and I was worried I wouldn't max my tac ops, but I did. So I managed to be vet guard first. Round 2, I was playing Surge the Points against Commandos. So this is the one where the defender, which would have been the commando player, picks which side, and it's like you can do an action point based on the turning point where the objective is. So objective 1, turning point 1 is objective 1, and da da da. So this was actually really worrying for me because infiltration is really good into Felgor's, and then I realized I had no way to deal with his bomb squig apart from shooting it with auto pistols and maybe a plasma pistol. So I was actually terrified. But what happened? Turning point 1, he moved up into the room with the bomb squig and the leader, and he got that room, and I just abandoned it. So then I focused on objective 2. So what he missed, and I noticed, was because I had basically everyone on conceal, if he just moved all the way to my barricade on objective 2, he would have blocked me off the point. So I quickly moved up to objective 2 and 3, but he never realized. And then I just managed to win ahead by frenzying and just sitting on the objectives because it's whoever controls the most. And he kept forgetting my gong was a banner. So the issue is, I actually wasn't winning fights until he had popped just a scratch, because if I charged him, he'd pop just a scratch and basically win the fight. So I had to parry him out, and then I'd live on 2 wounds and he'd be like on 6. So I had to find ways for him to waste just a scratch. I think I didn't actually even fight him in some actions, like some turns, just to waste out. Like what got really lucky for him is because he opened the door turning point 2 and moved away, and then all I did was charge away one of my beastmen onto objective 2. So then he detonated his bomb squig on one of my beastmen and only rolled 1 hit, and I rolled 1 save. So I got really lucky there, but it was actually really close. I managed to just go ahead on the primary by 3 points because I maxed tac ops and he maxed tac ops. At the end of the game, I think I had 5 beastmen, but he was almost wiped out. But it was just really dumb because I had taken secure rooms, recover item, and faction tac op free. And then when I realized faction tac op free, I just had to be within red of his guys. Crazy. I just maxed all my my tac ops by turning point 3. It's crazy, crazy, crazy. But I still won. But this was definitely my toughest game. Like if he was able to either push me off the points turning point 1, like stop me going on, or his bomb squig had gotten a little bit luckier, it would have been a really uphill battle for me. But it was just stuff he missed. Like he was actually doing really the correct stuff. He was moving up, shooting me. Like his burner was being a big threat because he just moved up to guys, flamed them down to like 2-4 wounds, and then all I could do was just charge and pass because I couldn't charge him because I'd die. So oddly, like he was just like dashing into my face, doing really good plays. The only issue was just I was abusing Frenzy just to stay on objectives and score my attack ops. And then by that point, I managed to push through and just kill enough guys to win. So that was game 2. Then game 3, this is like the weird loop mission on Into the Dark. And me and my opponents both made a mistake because we assumed he had to be on the objective to do the point, and then we realized after we deployed and placed our barricades, you had to be on the inner circle. But as you can see, on this map, I was against Intercession, and I had sent 2 beastmen up front, and then I had 8 beastmen in a bubble. So in the strategic phase, I dashed all 8 beastmen to that door. It was great. Stupid but great. But basically, end of turning point 1, he'd sent 2 guys down, 1 guy to the mid, and 3 guys up the top right. And I had 2 guys near the top right, and everyone just swarming. Because of my free dash, my comms gave someone my Mauler +1 APL, and he moved and dashed to score recover item because it's just dumb. And then really interesting stuff happened. So he went into the room on the left, I went into the room on the right, and then basically because he realized he couldn't stop me scoring recover secure rooms in the bottom left because he had 2 Marines and I had 8 Beastmen. But then I picked the room I only had 1 Beastman in, so I just could auto score it next round. The highlight of the match for me, because what he did, he actually moved up and was just shooting me, because most people were telling me like they've already planned out how to beat Felwall's Ravagers, just to move up and shoot, then force me to charge. So he'd moved up at the start of turning point 2 onto objective 1, moved up, shot my Shaman down to 1 wound, and then all my Shaman did was charge into the point and capture it, and then I just dogpiled his Intercessor until he died, and I only killed 3 Intercessors that game. But my highlight of the game was realizing I had 6 Beastmen left, and I needed to max faction tac op 3. So what I did, he had an Assault Intercessor on the left room on 1 wound because of my Mauler. And then I just surrounded him with Beastmen because I only need 1 guy within red of another operative. And then at the end of the round, he was like, okay, I know you're going to max this, so I'll pay a CP to fight. So I'll hit your Mauler. He's gone 6 wounds. I'll knock him down to 2. And I was like, cool, I'll parry. He's like, okay, I'll hit you and kill you. And he was like, yep. Now I frenzy. And he was like, oh, because he assumed I would just fight him and kill him. But I parried. So at the end of turning point 3, you had 1 Assault Intercessor on 1 wound, surrounded by 6 Beastmen. It was hilarious. And effectively, because I only killed 3 Intercessors, I had enough to secure the rooms. So I was ahead on primary by 2, and I had maxed all my tac ops. Well, he hadn't maxed any because of security. So I managed to win that with max points. So end of that tournament, I won with max points, which was interesting considering the old missions are really hard to max primary. So that was fun. But I effectively played loot, capture, and secure. Effectively. Just the old Into the Dark versions. But I quickly realized I should have just gone recon every game, because my plan to abuse Frenzy and just score my tac ops was much better when I went secure unexplored rooms, recover item, and then faction tac op free. Because literally, especially with faction tac op free, you just have to be within red of the drop zone of other enemy operatives. So what I would do is just do suicide charges onto points and stuff, because I would be like, okay, I know you can't kill me because either I'm on full wounds and I've activated, or like I've got too many guys near you. And opponents quickly realized I wasn't actually playing to kill. All I was doing was, a lot of the time in most of my games, I was just charging and passing, because if I charged and killed someone, I'd actually be in the open. So all I was doing was just charge blocking every game, because it's better for me if they fight me in their activation, especially against commandos and marines, because I will do better, because I'll frenzy and then I can just kill them in my activation anyway. But because I knew I could use frenzy, I just secured all my tac ops. My riskiest game was literally game 1, because if my opponent just decided to pull back entirely, I wouldn't actually have been able to max seek and destroy, and I'd taken faction tac on 1, and I had my Gorehorn who killed 2 guys. Then I lost initiative, but my opponent didn't want to gamble charging in, because he just had 1 guy who could charge with 3 attacks, and he just moved back, and then my Gorehorn charged, killed someone, died, but he killed his 3rd guy and maxed my faction tac op 1. And that was it. It was like the weirdest thing. So a lot of people were like, oh, you just beat random noobs. There are actually a lot of mostly experienced players there. You had brand new players, but that's the same with every Warhammer World. Well, Warhammer tournament pretty much. But interestingly, at least half the field had actually bought in Gallowfall. They just either hadn't gotten around to building the Beastmen or had built them but didn't paint them. And the funny thing is, we were talking about every round how to beat the Beastmen, because they were like, oh, you know, I've watched the reviews, I know they do this, but this is what I was planning. I was like, yeah, they can do this, explaining everything, how they work, like going like, this is what I can do. So everyone was like, every game doing the right thing. You know, what people said online was just move up, shoot them, and then knock them down to a few wounds. So then when they charge, they can't do anything. And yeah, the Beastman worked better than expected, because I just, like, it was just dumb. It wasn't even like enjoyable playing them. It was just kind of like, because Into the Dark rewards planning in general, it was just kind of like, oh, I can ensure situations you can't stop now with this kill team. And to be fair, the people who said they wanted data were actually oddly receptive of seeing Felgors win, because they were like, okay, that's fine. And the reason I took them wasn't to go, oh yeah, first tournament with Beastmen. It was just to show how dumb they were. I was hoping the devs would be there so I could just, because they usually have Warhammer World tournaments, just to go like, why? But they weren't, and that was a little disappointing. But it was just, it's just dumb. And when I realized how easy Faction Tac Op 3 was, especially with Frenzy, there was no way my opponents could stop me scoring. The interesting feedback I got, some people were like, oh, what do you expect? They're obviously going to be better on Into the Dark. Like, Into the Dark super favors them. Like, it's just a bit, it's broken with Felgor's Ravagers. And I was like, well, people said Into the Dark was balanced, and this team was playtested and balanced around Into the Dark. So it doesn't really make sense that it's okay for them to be broken on Into the Dark. And even on open boards, it's fine. Like, you just replace secure unexplored rooms, which would be secure vantage, with just courier. Like, this team is so easy to score recon. Like, as for tactics, the main takeaway is, if you're playing Felgors, I think it's just better always going recon and taking Faction Tac Op 3, because you just go like, recover item, you go surge forwards or courier, and then you just take Faction Tac Op 3. Because if you play right, all you do is you just body block the points. Your opponent has to come to you. They either fall back and give you the primary and you score your tac ops anyway because you're not focused around killing, or they come to you and slowly grind away and die. Like, even the Marines, like, an Intercessor killed one Beastman, went down to 4 wounds, so another Beastman just charged and killed him. The Commandos were knocking Beastman down to like 2 wounds, and then I was just charging and passing. Like, this team is amazing with charge blocking, because all you just do is you charge block, you secure the objectives. Like, my MVP every game was the Banner, like the guy with the gong, because as I said, he would gong, charge. If they were on guard, he would eat the guard, and also he would have that bubble of treating normal damage as crit damage and just make everyone this huge bullet sponge. And because he counted as +1 APL on an objective, I'd win objectives. And also I was just using the Pox Bomb, just running around throwing it at people to give a -1 APL. So I was just winning objectives natively because I could throw it on my own guys. I might take some more wounds if I'm unlucky, but I'm immune to APL modifications. So if you charge me on a point, I'll just throw my stun bomb because I'll be immune to it. And what I was doing most games was taking Commandos and the Marines. My tech was to go 7 Warpaint and a crack, and against Guardsmen I went 8 Warpaint and a frag. And that worked amazingly well. I even think post using the Felgor's Ravagers, I think if you were going to change them balance-wise, I don't even think Warpaint going to 2 would be enough, because even 5 Felgor just having Warpaint is crazy. One thing I did get was they're not so bad on open. They're actually easier to play against on open. And I was like, only a little bit. Like, if you abuse the strategy phase dash, you can actually get up the board quite quickly using your Psyker as a super conceal bubble, because you only need them there for 1 turning point. And then if you may go, oh yeah, but you're in the middle of the board. Once again, you use your leader to space out that strategy phase dash so no one's within white of each other, and then you just charge forward. It's crazy. Like if you play this team not to kill, but just to deny points, it's ridiculous. It's crazy. I don't know how you're supposed to beat them in Into the Dark if you play them this way. But as to stress, it wasn't to play Beastmen to show that because they were the best. It was to show how they can be so strong. It's not their killing power. Like their killing power is great, but that's not why they're dumb. It's literally if you abuse Frenzy to just ensure you have the objectives so you can score your tac ops. Like they need to change Frenzy so you can't score tac ops and control objectives with it. Because if I couldn't do that, I probably would have lost every game. And that it's just mad. Like if you play them that way, because the interesting thing, a lot of people have been feeding back to me like, oh, Felgors are fine. I haven't beaten them on Into the Dark, but when I've played them on Open, you know, they just run and kill and I beat them. And I was like, okay, did they play Recon? I was like, oh, no, they were all Seek and Destroy. I was like, okay. Have you tried playing them against Recon? And then the people who've played them Recon have gone, oh, wow, I haven't lost a game yet. Like, I feel Seek and Destroy is a trap with this kill team. It's just ridiculous. But the one thing I wanted to show off is what I'm really annoyed at is people who have already banned them or are using community comp. So there are actually a worryingly large number of communities who have come forward and told me they've just banned Felgor. And I kind of get that. Like if you wanted to have like a gentleman's agreement at events, that's fine. But they're banning them at just their club nights as well. Like they've gone full hog banning. Or the other thing was people have changed the rulings. So they are now, according to the rumor vines, using playtester wording where if you frenzy them, they still count as being incapacitated. Because some people were like, oh, what rulings did they go for frenzy at Warhammer World? And I was like, rules as written. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, well, rules as written, if you're frenzy, you're not incapacitated. And they were like, oh, interesting. And I was like, because apparently a lot of tournaments in places are going forward with their own custom rulings on frenzy, which is also really bad. So I don't want people banning Felgor's Ravagers, but I also don't want people community comping them, especially if large tournaments are doing it, because the issue is what we had with Pathfinders. So when Pathfinders were launched, there was a huge like community, like gentleman's agreement where people just silently banned Pathfinders. So when we first did the stats, we were like, Pathfinders were like on a 50% win rate because most players had banned them, like were just refusing to use them. And I don't think we should do that. Does it suck if broken kill teams run around and ruin metas? Yes. Is it a responsibility of players to rein that in? To an extent, but the real onus comes down to Games Workshop for releasing kill teams in these states. But it doesn't help if we kind of manipulate the data by just banning kill teams or completely changing how the rules work. Like, I'm fine if there's some ambiguity, but when a rule such as Frenzy goes, instead of being incapacitated, you are frenzied, like, there's no ambiguity there. You're just changing the wording, no matter what you may have been heard or told. And I just wanted to show how easy it is to abuse these guys and win events, because it still was a tough field. Like originally I was going to take Hand of the Archon, and I think it would have been really tough playing Hand of the Archon on that tournament. And I might have gone down to Vet Guard due to bodies, just because they outnumber, but I still think that would have been okay. But I might have lost to Commandos on Into the Dark, but it would have been a completely different game with a completely different kill team. But if you play Felgor's Ravagers as a super denial, I'm just going to score my tac ops and the objectives, your choice is to either come and fight me or stay off the objectives. This kill team is ridiculous. And that's what I was trying to explain in the review. And to be fair, I did explain it badly. I think I didn't explain, I thought I did, but it's the way of just body blocking points with Frenzy. But because you can still contest objectives and score tac ops, you can use dead operatives to score objectives and then score tac ops. And that is like the biggest thing, because like excluding Into the Dark, Recon in general is a very passive tac op archetype, and it just excels what you want to do. You want to be in your opponent's face, just take Recon. It's more reliable than Seek and Destroy, and your opponent has to actively fight you to stop it. Like they have to shoot you then charge you, which isn't easy. And like you can guarantee stuff like Courier. It's really hard for your opponents to stop. Like, as I said, on open, I would generally go recover item, faction tac op free, and then courier. And then on Into the Dark, you generally go secure unexplored rooms or courier, then recover item and faction tac op free. Because that mobility of the leader is insane. Like, anyway, that's what I was trying to show. But if you're upset that I'm using them, I understand. Like, but to be fair, as I said at the start, I've played a lot of kill teams I don't enjoy just because they're strong. A lot of the time in order to get them nerfed, because the issue is it's fine saying they're strong, but you kind of have to prove it as well. Like, the funny thing is I've spent months arguing with Pathfinder players that they needed to be nerfed, and they were like, no, they're fine. And I was like, I'm literally winning tournaments with Pathfinders because I'm just mark-lighting stuff to death. Or when people said Void Dancer Troop were fine, even with the stats, I was like, okay, showed how dumb Void Dancer Troop worked by winning several tournaments. Breachers, I won a tournament with them and then did really well in LVO just because I was abusing Brace and all their strats. And then even Hunterclade, I managed to win the London final after 4 games with Hunterclade. And then, to be fair, I did really bad at the US Open final. But Hunterclade got to the, like, half the field was Hunterclade. So, you know, and Commandos. So, you know, I technically have a streak of going to Warhammer World, winning with problematic kill teams, and then they mysteriously get nerfed. So, you know, I am still not a playtester. Still not a playtester. But yeah, if you're upset at that, I understand. But I'm not trying to defend myself in a way. I still stand by what I said. Like, I just didn't enjoy playing that kill team. And I just wanted to prove a point that they are problematic. And if you play them in this way, they're a big problem. But also not to just community ban them or change how they work. We have to play with them how they are and wait for GW to change them, because we can't change them ourselves. And I expect they will, but we actually need to do it instead of just community banning things. As for the tournament itself, it was great. We all got medals. Everyone got medals for like first, second, and third, best painted and most sporting. And it was a really fun event. The only downside was the menu, because you don't get a free menu. You get Bugman's burger menu. That wasn't a great burger, but it was a really good event, really smoothly run, and everything was clear. We even finished early. So we had an hour before the final, after the round 3 finished on time, and then the award ceremony was supposed to be an hour after, and they just brought it forward so we could all go home early. And it was really neat. I'll definitely be going to more weekday events. They're great, but Warhammer World events in general are really good. And the events team said now, like, crit ops are basically enough in circulation. They can always do crit op missions, which is just going to be great because, you know, I hate going back to the old missions. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me today. I need to edit this down because this is, at the time of recording, nearly an hour long. So this is going to be fun. But please remember to like and subscribe as well as comment. Let me know what you thought. Do you agree, disagree, all that kind of stuff. Interested to hear your feedback. And remember, I've got a Discord you can check out in the episode description below, as well as a Patreon and an affiliate link if you want to give me some more support. But I'll quickly shout out my patrons. So for my adepts of the crit, I have Tall Bardin, Sam, Ninja Lee 83, Nicholas, Nick, Mr. Meatwad, Kenzie, John Thomas, Eric, Captain Murder, Dad of Goldens, Ben, Average Joe 27, Arthur, and Samja. So thank you so much for all your support. It really means a lot to me. But yeah, I need to do... Gosh, I have so much stuff to do. I'm behind on like several videos. I still need like... I have to do another battle report. So much stuff. But yeah, I'll be back with more stuff soon. I don't know if I'll be going to any tournaments soon because it's really hard to juggle in tournaments with work at the moment. Like, this is the other reason I took Beastman to Warhammer World. After, like, because of work, it's actually really hard to schedule in tournaments this year. So if I play any more, we'll be playing more, but it's like sporadically random. So yeah, until next time, no matter how many Beastmen you face in space, or no matter how many times your tournament rules may change during rounds, remember, there's always a chance to win, as long as you can roll a crit.